As soon as they found out it's from Harlem, I want to look like I'm from Harlem. I want to talk like I'm from Harlem. I want to dress like I'm from Harlem. I want to fight like I'm from Harlem. I want to love like I'm from Harlem. And I want to cuss your ass out, if necessary, to let you know I'm really from Harlem. Generally speaking, I've always considered student protests as a part of the freedom of speech, get new ideas, and I can't recall when I wasn't supporting the causes that the university students would have. Of course, when you get involved with the loss of life, physical violence, destruction of property, you have to really take a closer look to make certain that safety is a precaution. I was involved in the 60s when Columbia invaded a public park and put a gymnasium there, and and we prevailed. But I had to threaten to lie down in front of a bulldozer, and having come back from combat, I wasn't really that courageous. But the type of community support we got there was good for us as a community, and we won it.
Yeah, and speaking of prevailing, right now, speaking of Harlem specifically, what do you think prevailing looks like for the Harlem community?
We don't know. We actually lose the battle in terms of black population. And it looks like when you take property that could be used to provide for moderate rents and low-income rents for businesses, for the community people. In other words, anchors. You can't have a community unless your anchor that can afford to live there. But if indeed, because of the geographic superior position that we are in the country, in the city, in Manhattan, there's any number of people. It's precious property, and all we have is our history and morality on our side. And so that's what this is all about. We're up against a billion-dollar corporation, against people living in a community that they're losing their right to live and work dramatically.
Yeah, and speaking of that, take us back a little bit into the history because we were talking about different projects that could be where that West Harlem campus is, like Harlem on the Hudson. What are some projects that could happen to help be an economic driver for the local community?
Well, first, let me say that when Columbia University first sought Upper Manhattan as their campus, they were not thinking of the revolutionary changes in population that would take place. And so they never probably envisioned that a minority community would not only surround the campus, but be an impediment to the expansion. And being probably the largest university in the world, certainly in New York, scattered all over the world, they have proceeded to purchase property surrounding that area. It just so happened that a part of that property was Harlem and was Harlem. Having said that, we have not had such a good relationship over the years, starting from the protests in the 60s. But I must admit that with each change of the president, it seems like more and more they realize that their success was dependent on the surrounding community. And that is why when they started talking about expansion, we started thinking about being a part of that partnership believing they had no place else to go except negotiate with us. At that time, we had the Harlem Urban Development Corporation, and we had exciting ideas how we could take that Hudson River and the surrounding areas, including Columbia, and make it a tourist destination and an economic opportunity for all of the people in Harlem and the surrounding area. We had renderings of under the viaduct, having small businesses, restaurants, cafes, small stores, boats docked, restaurants on the ocean. We thought that even an increase in the population of Columbia will have a place for them to stay, a place for their staff to stay, a place where people with moderate income could stay. And I'm telling you, in every major city I've seen, there's a space like that people said, and don't forget to stop by. And that was our dream for Harlem on the Hudson. And we've had many international people from other countries come and look at it and laud our ideas and what we're supposed to do. Last, we got a Republican governor, Pataki, whose concern was not Manhattan. His concern probably was just with Columbia, and all of a sudden our dreams were shot. Well, recently, Columbia picked up another economic investment that we've had for years called Fairway Department Store, a grocery store, and it was very popular outside of even the immediate area. And the former president had told me that they had not any plans for it, that they bought it for millions of dollars to avoid someone coming in with an unattractive business like a storage house, and that it would be an opportunity for us to review the contract that we had with Columbia to see whether we could take this and improve the surrounding areas. I immediately, with the help of Don Cogswell, who was the executive director of the Harlem Urban Development, got together the congressman from the area, the borough president from the area, and brought up the Harlem on the Hudson, including this time, of course, the new 2nd Avenue subway, which the borough president had dreams of having it come from 2nd Avenue across the 125th Street economic corridor. We had hoped that that the Hudson River would serve as a place for transportation and ferries from South Manhattan to Northern Manhattan. And it was something that we had thought would impress the new president as she started into her term. Unfortunately, when we got there, it was made very clear that they did not intend to go beyond the area that they had in the contract. I was severely disappointed because a group of ministers, politicians, concerned citizens had been meeting at a church for a couple of years, still holding on to this dream and still wanting to get cooperation from Columbia University. And they came to me. Now, I've been retired. I've been in state legislature for 4 years, the Congress for 46 years, and so I finally retired, and but I certainly would support the elected officials and the community in reviewing once again this plan to expand so that more people will be able to benefit from the so-called contract.
Yeah.
Well, when it was turned down, the community wrote a letter. And I might say it was a pretty forceful letter indicating that, in the view of many, Columbia had for years deliberately, surreptitiously acquired property using eminent domain and their economic power to prevent the community from being able to interfere with their expansion. And the letter spoke specifically about misdeeds that they had committed. Columbia ignored the letter completely. And so I had to stop negotiating with Columbia because I thought our community was deserving of a response. The attacks that were made were vicious, yes, but a gigantic organization should be able to show that they were not true. The second thing was the question of eminent domain. Many people have been critical of eminent domain, and we had hoped that they would come forward and show how the community had benefited from their use of eminent domain. Well, those things didn't happen, and fortunately, one of our senators, Cordell Clare, introduced a bill which indicated that it would cease the contract, it would stop eminent domain, and it was lauded throughout the areas of people that belonged to organizations that were designed to give truth to power. You would have thought that this would have agitated Columbia enough to come forward to say, let's renegotiate it, let's see what your complaints are. On our side, we built these magnificent buildings. And anybody that travels from central Harlem to get to the highway, when you get to that Hudson, you see these gigantic, beautiful, classic office buildings surrounded by depression, by areas and empty stores. So I was really surprised recently to see the response from Columbia University to the introduction of legislation to say, let's review the plan and let's review the misuse of eminent domain, that Columbia University said that their contract with the community was a great success and that the community had received all of these benefits as a result of the partnership, but worse than that, said that all of the participants was extremely pleased as the concept worked out. Now, I don't know what cigarettes they smoke over there, but I tell you this, I think this is the best thing that happened to us in a long time. There will be long, drawn-out cases in court. We do expect the tremendous power, political and financial, that Columbia has to prevent people from protesting too loudly. But I don't see how the community will not be able to prevail with the idea of telling this big university, this big partner of ours, if you think that it's worked and everything that you've had in there, that our community has been successful in reaching its goals and its ambitions, let's have a hearing. So to me, that's where we are now. It's the biggest victory in the world when two parties have such a dispute and it's in the public good. So we don't have to win every battle in court, but we certainly are going to win the battle of whether or not the community will be able to continue to live peacefully with the world's largest university as partners in a very small geographic area called Manhattan.
And it seems like Columbia has, as we like to say, a history of arrogant behavior towards the community. And I mean, what are your thoughts about their response to Cordell Clear's letter? You know, to their letter to Cordell Clear's legislation. I mean, it was
Quite honestly, the way you have to forgive the explorers from snatching Manhattan away from the natives that was here, I'm willing to forgive the early days of Columbia for trying to protect their investment. But like I said, over the years I thought that they had learned to understand there's no place to go.
yeah,
We're forced to be partners. And so why not work together and work this thing out? Because the only thing surrounding this great institution, no matter how powerful they are, is the Hudson River and my community.
how does that look? The community working with Columbia, in your opinion?
It's like any contract. If it's working, if people are benefited, if people are getting jobs, a place to stay, getting an education, so that they can compete and become successful. If the students, and the institution has to be friendly to make certain too that some of the students come from our community because the tuition is very, very high, the highest in the nation. And so having a big brother like Columbia could be a great asset for us as we attract people that want to invest to make this a homogeneous relationship. But the answer to that question remains right now in Columbia's hands. And as far as my community says, the fact that Columbia is saying that this program that was enacted is succeeding, and the community's citizenship, its clergy, its people, its community leaders, its politicians are happy, there should be no reason in the world why they should have to be forced to have a hearing. They should welcome a hearing, and I think that good judgment will demand it. If people want to support Columbia, they have to support their position. And if their position is successful, they have to prove it.
Yeah. And I think, we obviously understand about some of the repercussions in terms of displacement for Harlem residents, but there's also the residents in Washington Heights that have things at stake. What do we need from our political leaders to come together in order to make sure those residents have peace of mind?
I got it. And I think the senator has joined forces with the assemblyman of that area, and that Al Taylor, and he has constituents, and hopefully people would know that we're not just concerned with Harlem, we're not just concerned with Washington Heights. The most valuable piece of property, I think, in the world is located in the United States of America. It's located in New York City. It's located in the borough of Manhattan. And I think we got more going for us with rivers on both sides, with two major airports, with a subway system, a transportation system, a big brother with billions of dollars, and a community that has a history that goes back for over a century of being the place where we've had the Black Renaissance. We've had so many things that has raised the spirit of people that Harlem has known throughout the world.
Yeah.
And Washington Heights, that's been the bed place for immigrants to come and succeed. So this is an opportunity for Columbia, and I hope they go into the relationship not with a sense of fighting the community, but trying to work it out. They got no place to go, and neither have we.
Yeah, and speaking of the importance of institutions like HUDC and what they used to call, I think, is the Gang of Four, take us back to the importance of having that gatekeeper in Harlem that was making sure was fighting for the residents. So things didn't expedite so quickly like it did with Columbia.
Well, I was fortunate enough as a member of Congress to have one of the most exciting politicians called Percy Sutton. And his persuasion in allowing our assembly and our Senate to believe that every community should participate in its political future. And as a result of that, the Harlem Urban Development Program was developed to plan with government, to plan with the private sector, how we wanted to increase our ability to succeed financially and, of course, historically. We had a state senator, Basil Patterson, whose son went on to become governor. That was at one time our president of Manhattan and also served in the state legislature. And of course, we had David Dinkins, who went on to become mayor of this great city. But most importantly, we had the support of the people in the community, and we worked together. I cannot think of any public dispute that we ever had because we all felt individually that our responsibility was to the general. So when we spoke as a community, we spoke in one voice. People didn't have to go around and shop to find out who would disagree with us because they knew what was going on. And so we are trying to build that type of thing together. And there's no question in my mind that you're going to find it very difficult to someone to challenge the position that we will soon be taking publicly, and that is, let's have a hearing. Let's review the agreement that you've had. Let's take a look at eminent domain. Let's take a look at the power that Columbia has, and as our neighbors, our big brother, have we shared in that. If they want to use eminent domain to get rid of these small shops and whatnot, even though it's an extraordinary power for a private entity to be using, then the community should be the beneficiary of it as we clear and rebuild the area together. Quite frankly, I'm trying to be as fair as possible. I can't see any one reason that Columbia University can give for refusing to review the community benefit program that was established years ago and appears to be not working to the benefit of the community.
Yeah. And just so for the viewers to understand, why is that agreement not working, would you say?
Well, it's not working because up until now, Columbia has taken the position that there was no problem. Let me reinstate this, that even though I had this unofficial conversation with the president of the university for decades, he's been able to raise billions of dollars for Columbia University. And when he told me that they had purchased Fairway, 17, well, it's a very large amount of land and also a very high price they pay for it, but had no plans for it. I said, that's hard to believe. He says, no, we did not want someone to come and buy it and be a sore spot for our community. I immediately said, then that should mean that the community should be a part of what goes there and the surrounding area. He said, by all means. For months before they selected, before we were able to get a meeting with the new president, her staff was saying, yes, you will have your meeting. And I enlarged it so that it would not just be the Harlem on the Hudson. It would be the ferry system on the Hudson, the subway system on the Hudson for the entire borough of Manhattan. The beneficiary would be Columbia, their students, their professors, the housing, the areas of recreation, the little stores, to make it really a place that people would want to go, not only for education, but to have a good time, to get an education, to have a place to work, a place to live. But that never was on the agenda. And we were just about to try to get it on the agenda when this community group, led by Pastor Curtis and Reverend Blue, were fed up, got impatient, and wrote this letter talking about the racism that existed between Columbia and the community from the beginning of the time that they started their educational institution. I could not accept everything that was in the letter as being true because I don't believe that the Indians of Manhattan got a fair deal when they sold the island to the Dutch. But I do believe that Columbia was responsible for answering the letter and showing that they may have made mistakes in the past, but they were on a job of healing and building and working together in the future. I thought that we were entitled to that. And now they've responded to the state legislature in saying that what they were doing, that they don't have to respond, that everything is working well. Well, that's the answer. Let's see what's going on and let some sunshine on the project.
Can you tell us, I know you briefly mentioned it, but why you think HUDC was shut down?
Well, HUDC was becoming a power in terms of its vision. We were deciding what we wanted for the Hudson River on our side of it. We were deciding what kind of businesses, what kind of homes we wanted to create. We were deciding that we wanted an education for our children so that they too can be students. And the Republican administration, one of the first things they did was defund us and eliminate our ability to continue. Well, a community that doesn't have the opportunity to get urban planners, economists, and plan for the future can't survive. But I knew when I created the empowerment zones, I got Columbia University to help me with the tax issues for being able to prepare a bill in the Congress. I was hoping that if Columbia sees it's to their benefit to be in a surrounding that is so popular that people want to go there for business, for entertainment, for jobs, to live there, that they would be located in the most friendly atmosphere. That's not happening, but it's my hope that if we push, and we will, for hearings, that they would be forced just by common sense to lay out their case so that we can prove to them that it's a long way from what we had hoped.
What's that process look like in terms of us getting this proposed bill passed by Cordell Clear?
I don't want to be negative on this, but you may or may not know that this has been legislated many times. We have won some court cases, but the state highest court approved it in terms of being used in this project. It's an extraordinary power for government to be able to take private property and say it's for the good of the community that we take it from you, and we decide as a government what is a fair property. So that I think the very least is that each case has to be decided on the facts in terms of what's being condemned and what is the use going to be. In any event, there's a strong feeling that the whole idea of the taking of private property should be reviewed, not for Columbia and Harlem, but for the use of this, not only throughout New York State, but in many, many other states. It is a very idea that just sounds and smacks of being unfair and unconstitutional.
Yeah, it's happening. It's really happening all over. And I wanted to ask just a couple more questions. What do you think young people should understand about the importance of local politics and these issues from Harlem, Washington Heights, anyone watching this?
When you see our young people protesting and sometimes using extraordinary methods to get attention, we have to remember what they have not seen from the day that they were born. It is so difficult for us parents and grandparents to forget that we have been subject to a lot of criticism by our kids and grandkids because they never knew just how deep racism was enrooted in this country. And I think today's kids have seen a government that the United States should not be very proud of. The abuse of our military in Vietnam and in other parts of the world, the thrashing of civil rights, the killing of Kennedy and Malcolm X and King, the violence that we've seen, the failure of a community born in slavery, and all of these years not being able to reach that point economically and socially that we can effectively compete. And the deep-seated bias that the writers of the Constitution had does not give us the right to be critical of kids that had the high hopes that were drafted into this Constitution. The idea that all men were created equal when the writers never were thinking about black people, brown people, Asian people. The fact that we have had laws to make blacks inhuman and not to be able to count as human, banned Chinese and people of color. I mean, we have not lived up to the standard that we talk about. And when the kids try academically to find out, what is this great country all about? What are we built on? How can we make a contribution? How can we make it better? And now they're telling us that we're not allowed to read about our past, and neither is anyone else allowed to know what mistakes we have made. It means that our young people have to believe that the fight is worth it and to take a good look at the alternative. I don't like this type of politics where you have to say if you don't do this, something bad and evil's going to happen. I prefer the campaigns that show things may be bad, they may be good, but they could be better. This is the opportunity that you have. This is what you can get if you fulfill what's expected of you as a human being. for yourself, for your family, for your community, and for your collective political power, these things are achievable. And give them the examples, not the assassinations, of how it can be attained. Now we are faced, I think, with a test of the whole democratic idea. I'm old enough to remember the World War II documentaries. I remember thousands and millions of white Catholic and Christian Germans electing Hitler. I know that they knew that Hitler was there to assassinate and to kill a part of the German Jews. And I saw how effective he was able to bring this feeling of lack of achievement that individuals have and to make it hatred. Now we're living in a community that everybody in Charlotte were not born together with the same, but they all believed that they were being shortchanged. If they were from the South, they think that the Northerners took away their richness and the plantation and their black free labor, and they hate it. If they were Anglo, they think the Italians and the Irish took over and they weren't supposed to be counted. And now we have a hatred being built up against the ever-expanding Oriental population and the power of the Jewish population. So hatred is now becoming a substitute in this country right now for patriotism. And you can see that the concerns for fairness, no matter how displayed, that all over our country we have young people saying what is happening is wrong. I think they have to band together and get those basic things of fairness, not just against a handful of racists, but against a system that has been unfair to many, many of its population. And in order to do that, the main thing you have to do is to face the truth. But like most people who are afraid of the truth, burn the books, don't let people talk about it, and make it a law to say that if I win, I'll change everything, and if I lose, I will not leave office. I think that's enough for our youngsters to start off with.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of New York, there's, I think, since 2020, 200,000 black families have left. What would you say are some ways we can keep our black population here in New York City?
You need a place to stay. My son, I would not leave New York City for my health, but I'd be less than honest to say that my son, after getting married and becoming a lawyer, he went to South. I wouldn't go to South for anything, but people are leaving the fight and the struggle. And I think that if you don't like the conditions where you are, meet with some people and see what you can do about it and change it, and don't run away from it. I'm not saying that you have to be stuck where you cast your bucket, but I think it's best been said by John Lewis, my colleague in the March to Montgomery, as well as my colleague in Congress. One thing you can't do is give up, give out, or give in. If it's worth thinking and talking about, then it's worth sacrificing and fighting for it.
Yeah. What would you say makes a great politician?
I don't know what the word politician means. I believe that in order to get involved in public service, you really have to get an enjoyment out of helping people without looking for a quid pro quo. I'm not a very religious person, but there's this paragraph in the Bible where Jesus says that a group of wealthy people would not be admitted to hell. And they said, why? He said, because I was hungry, I was sleepy, I was sick, I was in jail, I was thirsty, and you didn't give me anything. And that they should go straight to hell. And I kind of believe that if you get a satisfaction out of someone saying, thank you, I need it, and you're able to help, that's where public service comes in. I cannot think of anything that has brought me more satisfaction than dedicating my life to helping other people, except the selfish feeling that it was so appreciated is almost embarrassing. And so I'm very fortunate, and I know that most politicians feel that way. And I hope that youngsters who are not happy try to get into public life and try to make the changes that they can make and get their friends and collectively see what we're trying to do with a church that started off saying that 5 black kids that was arrested for rape in Central Park, they said they were innocent. When the newspapers, the community, everybody said it was the Central Park 5 were guilty. And they met and they met and they met and finally was able to prove. And the 5 kids were exonerated. One was elected to the city council. And what does it mean? It means you can't afford to give up, that you can persevere. And that church, with Dr. Curtis as the pastor, has been meeting weekly with people that are not happy. And they're now beginning to pull together their collective voices behind legislation. And that legislation has brought a multi-billion-dollar entity to the table.
Powerful. And 2 more questions for you. And speaking of the work with Curtis and the Interfaith Organization, what can we do to bring the governor to the table? It seems like she's holding a lot of the cards.
Well, she may be holding all of the cards. I mean, you got to build your hand. When you dealt the hand, you're the one that brought up the cards. You got to play the hand that you have.
Yeah.
So asking the governor, any governor, Democrat, Republican, for something, you have to find out what's going to make them happy in order to give it to you. On the other hand, you also have to find out what the hell is going to make them very, very unhappy.
Yeah.
And so what does the governor want? Support. Support. Fortunately, we have in the community supported the governor.
Yeah.
We've supported the mayor. And so we're in the best possible. We supported the city council. We're in the best possible political position to grant continuous support or to withhold it. The first stop is to get someone's attention. I think Senator Cordell Clear has done that. Now it's up to see what type of support she gets from the meetings, from the communities. Believe me, there's enough power in the people to have a hearing on Columbia.
Your favorite things about Harlem? If someone says Harlem to you, what comes to mind? Why do you love Harlem so much?
I'm addicted. I'm a junkie for Harlem. I was born here. I inherited the reputation of being from Harlem. I dropped out of high school. I went into the Army. And I was a big shot just because I was from Harlem. I can go all, I've been a congressman. I've been a no kind of man. I've been to cities all over the world. When I say I'm from Harlem, people stop and they look with a whole lot of admiration. You know, you don't have to be an internationalist to know and to be able to count your blessings. Just being born in the United States, despite its racist history, is a blessing. Being born in the city of New York gives you an opportunity to have an attitude that you haven't even earned yet. So you got to improve and pay your rent in terms of good deeds so that when people think that you're somebody, that you really have to be somebody.
I like that.
And that's one thing, as a politician, as soon as they found out I'm from Harlem, I want to look like I'm from Harlem. I want to talk like I'm from Harlem. I want to dress like I'm from Harlem. I want to fight like I'm from Harlem. I want to love like I'm from Harlem. And I want to cuss your ass out, if necessary, to let you know I'm really from Harlem.
I love that. All right, last question, because I have to ask for my father, Mr. Donald Cogswell. I'm lucky enough to be his son. I've learned so much from him, hearing you guys on the phone, going back and forth. Tell me, just, what were some of the good deeds he's done for Harlem?
Don Cogswell, greatest contribution to Harlem was his creativity and his ability not to let loose of an idea once he believes it's worthwhile. It's been 20, 30 years since we've had Harlem on the Hudson, but in your dad's mind, it's still a dream that can come true. And I thought it was dead until he called me. And you would think when I told him that I retired, that would be enough. But getting calls from him every day and every hour telling me what we can do has caused us now to reach this point that we're talking about a review of the entire project, not just his dream. And so we were able, with the support of Percy Sutton, the borough president, all the elected officials, to be able to hire someone that had the genius, not to say I want a better break, but to show how everyone can get a better break by working together in unity. And even now, with no staff, he's fortunate to have a son like you and people that believe and meetings that we're having to show that good ideas just don't die.